the question that collapses momentum. There is a single question that quietly ruins forward motion. Not dramatically, not loudly, but efficiently. Why? Why me? Why does this always happen? Why am I wired this way? Why can't I just change? It sounds intelligent. It feels reflective. It is neither. The why question does not open understanding. It closes movement. Breathe. When discomfort appears, most people assume something has gone wrong. Anxiety shows up, sadness, resistance, and the mind immediately looks for blame. It turns inward. Something is wrong with me. Dark humor moment. As if evolution sends emotions only after filling out a personal attack form. Here is the correction. Negative emotion is not malfunction. It is not misalignment. It is not proof that you are broken. It is friction generated at the edge of expansion. From a systems perspective, every identity has boundaries. Inside those boundaries, behavior feels familiar, predictable, safe. The moment you approach the edge, pressure appears. Not because you are failing, but because you are exceeding the operating range of an older configuration. This is where the real confusion begins. The resistance does not feel external. It feels personal. The emotion speaks in your voice. It borrows your thoughts. It sounds convincing. So you ask, why am I like this? And that question hands authority back to something obsolete. Breathe. There is an older identity structure running in the background, not conscious, not malicious, but persistent. A legacy self built from past adaptations, habits, beliefs, emotional strategies that once worked. It exists to preserve continuity, not truth. When a new direction appears, when growth threatens to make that structure irrelevant, resistance activates. Fear, doubt, guilt, victim narratives. Not because the future is wrong, but because the past wants to survive. Dark humor moment. The old version of you does not want you to fail. It wants you to stay recognizable. And when those emotions surface, the worst possible move is to interrogate them with why. Because why assumes a flaw, a defect, a story that needs justification. Transformation does not need justification. It needs permission to proceed. The why question locks attention backward. It forces analysis where transition is required. From a quantum perspective, attention collapses states. Where attention goes, probability follows. Asking why stabilizes the old configuration. It feeds the very structure that is losing relevance. Hermetic wisdom warned about this plainly. What you analyze, you animate. Breathe. This is the reframe. When resistance appears, it is not asking to be understood. It is asking to be outgrown. It is a signal that you are standing at a threshold, and something that cannot cross it is making noise. In the next chapter, we'll dismantle the mechanics of that resistance, how it forms, why it feels emotional, and how identity inertia disguises itself as self-doubt. That is where the illusion breaks. How the old you generates resistance. To understand resistance, you have to stop treating it like a feeling and start seeing it as a system. The old version of you is not a memory. It is not a story. It is a pattern that learned how to survive. Every reaction you once repeated, every belief that once kept you safe, every emotional loop that helped you endure something. Those patterns did not disappear when the circumstances changed. they consolidated. From an energy perspective, repetition creates density. Density creates persistence. That is how an identity forms. Breathe. This identity is not intelligent in the way you are. It does not reason. It does not evolve. It protects. Its only function is continuity. When the current self moves toward a threshold, a new behavior, a new level of responsibility, a new way of being, the legacy pattern detects risk. Not real risk, existential risk. If you move forward, it loses relevance. And irrelevance is death for a pattern. So it activates preservation protocols. Fear appears, not because danger is present, but because change is. Self-doubt appears, not because you are incapable, but because capability threatens the old structure. Guilt appears, not because you are wrong, but because departure feels like betrayal. Dark humor moment. The old you does not care if you are happy. It cares if it still exists. Breathe. Here is why this feels personal. The legacy identity uses your internal voice, your memories, your emotional language. It does not announce itself. It feels like you. So when resistance appears, the mind assumes authorship. I am scared. I am broken. I am not ready. That is the illusion. The current self is capable of expansion. The resistance belongs to what cannot expand. In physics, inertia resists acceleration. Not because acceleration is wrong, but because motion requires energy. Identity has inertia too. Hermetic wisdom described this simply. The past clings to form, the future dissolves it. Breathe. This is why resistance spikes right before change. If you were truly incapable, there would be no resistance. Nothing would be threatened. The presence of emotional friction means the boundary is being crossed. Most people misinterpret this signal. They stop. They analyze. They ask why. And the moment they do, momentum collapses back into the old pattern. Not because fate intervened, but because authority was returned to the obsolete structure. In the next chapter, we'll reframe negative emotion completely, not as a problem to fix, but as a boundary alarm that confirms growth is already happening. That is where fear stops being persuasive. Negative emotion is not failure. It is a boundary alarm. Here is where almost everyone gets it wrong. Negative emotion shows up, and the conclusion is immediate. Something is wrong. I'm blocked. I'm misaligned. I need to fix this. That interpretation is the real problem. Negative emotion is not a signal of collapse. It is a signal of contact. Contact with a boundary. Breathe. Every identity operates within limits. Limits of behavior. Limits of belief. Limits of emotional tolerance. Inside those limits, life feels familiar, predictable, manageable. The moment you approach the edge, the system reacts. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you are doing something new. From a biological perspective, this is obvious. The nervous system evolved to preserve known patterns. Unknown territory triggers alertness. That alertness is emotional. Fear, unease, irritation, doubt, not as commentary, as mechanism. Dark humor moment. People expect growth to feel like a motivational speech. It feels more like setting off a quiet alarm. Breathe. From an energy science perspective, expansion creates interference. When a higher frequency pattern attempts to stabilize, lower frequency structures destabilize. They do not disappear gracefully. They wobble. That wobble is felt as discomfort, Hermetic wisdom encoded this without softness. When a form reaches its limit, it resists dissolution. Negative emotion is that resistance. It is not personal. It is structural. This is why asking why is so damaging. Why assumes the emotion contains meaning that must be decoded. It doesn't. It contains location data. It tells you where the boundary is, nothing more. The moment you interpret negative emotion as a flaw, you retreat. You re-enter the safe zone of the old identity. Relief follows. Comfort returns. And growth stops. Dark humor moment. People call this listening to intuition. It is actually obeying inertia. Breathe. Here is the correct framing. Negative emotion does not mean stop. It means you are early. It means the new configuration is not yet dominant. It means the old one is still firing. That overlap is uncomfortable by design. In physics, phase transitions are unstable zones. Water does not calmly become steam. There is turbulence. Human identity behaves the same way. If you never feel resistance, nothing is changing. Comfort is not confirmation. Discomfort is not condemnation. They are signals of position. In the next chapter, we will strip the why question completely and replace it with queries that dissolve resistance instead of feeding it. That is where authority shifts, and the old identity begins to lose power without a fight. Why the why question feeds the old identity. Now we expose the trap. The moment resistance appears, the mind reaches for one question automatically. Why? Why do I feel this way? Why is this happening now? Why am I like this? It sounds mature. It sounds introspective. It feels productive. It is none of those. The why question is not a search for truth. It is a request for permission to stay the same. Breathe. Here is the mechanical issue. Why points backward. It asks the past to explain the future. It asks an obsolete structure to justify its own survival. And of course, it has an answer. The old identity is very articulate. It has years of data, memories, stories, evidence. It will happily explain why you should not move. Dark humor moment. You are asking the suspect to lead the investigation. From a consciousness mechanics perspective, attention equals authority. Whatever you question with seriousness becomes the reference frame. When you ask why, you grant authorship to the legacy identity. You let it narrate the moment, and narration stabilizes reality. Quantum systems behave the same way. Measurement collapses possibility. But the question determines what collapses. If the question is diagnostic, the collapse favors the existing state. If the question is directional, the collapse favors transition. Why is diagnostic? It searches for cause, fault, justification. Evolution does not require any of those. Hermetic wisdom warned about this very clearly. He who looks back to understand returns. Breathe. This is why people get stuck in endless self-analysis. They are not healing. They are maintaining coherence with an identity that should already be decaying. Every time you ask, why me? You reactivate the emotional charge. You revalidate the narrative. You feed the resistance field. The emotion intensifies, not because it is important, but because it is being powered. Then people say, this must be something I need to work through. Dark humor moment. No, you are just watering a plant you want dead. The old identity does not need truth to survive. It needs relevance. Why? gives it relevance. Here is the replacement rule. When resistance appears, do not ask questions that explain it. Ask questions that relocate you. Not why is this happening, but what boundary am I crossing? Not why do I feel this, but what behavior is this trying to stop? Not why am I blocked, but what changes if I proceed anyway? These questions do not feed the past. They dissolve it. Because they remove narrative. They remove drama. They remove identity authorship. In the final chapter, we will compress this into a simple protocol. What to do the exact moment resistance appears. How to proceed without emotional negotiation. And how the old identity loses power when it is no longer consulted. That is where evolution stops being psychological and becomes mechanical. The moment authority transfers, resistance dies. Everything collapses into one decisive moment. Not a healing moment, not an emotional breakthrough, a transfer of authority. Resistance does not disappear because it is understood. It disappears because it is no longer consulted. Breathe. The old identity survives through authorship. As long as it narrates experience, it remains active. The moment narration shifts, the moment interpretation is no longer requested. The structure begins to dissolve, not violently, not emotionally, quietly. From a systems perspective, patterns decay when they stop receiving input. From an energy perspective, frequency drops when coherence is withdrawn. From a hermetic perspective, form dissolves when attention leaves. Different languages, same mechanic, dark humor moment. The old you does not need to be defeated. It needs to be ignored. Here is the final protocol. When resistance appears, do not personalize it. Do not investigate it. Do not moralize it. Recognize it as legacy noise, then proceed anyway. Action is the transfer. Every time you act from the new position, despite discomfort, despite emotional static, you declare authorship. The subconscious registers this immediately. This is who is in control now. That registration changes everything. Negative emotion may still arise briefly, but it loses leverage, because leverage only exists where attention negotiates. Quantum mechanics frames this cleanly. States collapse based on observation. But observation without interpretation does not stabilize old outcomes. You are not fighting resistance. You are starving it. Hermetic wisdom ends the argument. Energy flows where attention rests. When attention rests forward, the past has nowhere to attach. Final compression. Negative emotion is not a sign to stop. It is proof that the old identity is losing relevance. The why question is not curiosity. It is loyalty to what must be left behind. You do not evolve by understanding your past. You evolve by ceasing to reference it. Once authority transfers, resistance has no jurisdiction. And what remains is movement, clean, quiet, unstoppable.